He was the prince of a fashion dynasty celebrating a collection that he knew was a lie. She was the broke artist his family had destroyed to build that lie. So what does he do? He secretly funds her, becoming an anonymous mentor to help her get revenge against his own father. This is the story of how a guilty conscience and a stolen design burned an entire empire to the ground. The first sound was the screech of metal, the F train Brooklyn-bound at 1:47 a.m. The air inside the car was thick with ozone-damp wool and the scorched coffee smell from an abandoned paper cup. Under the flickering, merciless fluorescent lights, Zara Vance looked like an overexposed photograph. She was exhausted. This wasn't the romantic fatigue of an artist. It was the bone-deep weariness of someone who had just worked a double shift at a loud Bushwick bar, where her hands that once sketched exquisite lines now only wiped counters and collected tips. The subway shrieked, emerging from underground, hurtling across the Manhattan Bridge. The October rain turned the windows into an abstract oil painting. And then she saw it. Across the river, Manhattan appeared like an artificial constellation, and dominating it all like a giant electronic deity was the 30-story digital billboard in Times Square. Stanton Legacy. A model spun in mesmerizing slow motion. The dress. Zara stopped breathing. The air was vacuumed from her lungs. It wasn't similar. It was it. Her mind rewound painfully. She felt a phantom ache in her fingertips, a muscle memory of hundreds of hours in her cramped studio apartment at 3 a.m. on her sixth coffee, perfecting that fold. The black rose fold. It was her signature, a unique pleating technique she had invented, inspired by the way a black rosebud protects itself in frost, both armor and fragility. It was her soul, and now that soul was on display, desecrated, being sold for 5 figures to the wealthy under the name Etherea. A numbing cold enveloped her. This wasn't anger. Anger was a privilege. It required energy. This was emptiness. Like watching your own house burn down from a distance and knowing you didn't even have the strength to scream. The train plunged back underground, swallowing her in darkness. Zara stared at her own reflection in the black glass. A ghost. Her dream hadn't just died. It had been exhumed, dressed up, and was dancing on its own grave. The screech of the subway was replaced instantly by the sharp clink of 100 champagne glasses touching, cut to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Met. The Temple of Dender was majestically lit, surrounded by New York's most beautiful and powerful people. The air was thick with Lalabo perfume and upper-class complacency. This was the Golden Citadel, and Alexander Stanton was its prince. He stood there, a perfect specimen of inherited success. His Tom Ford suit was impeccably tailored, but he felt it was just an expensive straitjacket. People surrounded him, congratulating him on Etherea. "Alex, brilliant," a fashion critic gushed. "This collection redefines Stanton. So bold." "Your father must be so proud," an investor clapped him on the shoulder. Alexander smiled. That smile was his best honed asset, distant, charming, and utterly hollow. He hated this collection. He hated it with a deep, simmering disgust. When he looked at the designs, yes, they were beautiful. They were selling like crazy. He saw nothing. No story, no risk. Its creative DNA felt like it had been synthesized in a lab. It lacked truth. "You're drifting, Alexander." His father's voice, Charles Stanton, cut through his thoughts. Charles didn't walk. He presided. A man built of legacy and steel-clad expectations. He held 2 glasses of champagne. "Smile." Charles ordered, his voice soft but no less potent. "This is your legacy, son. This triumph is yours." Alexander took the glass. Legacy. The word always tasted like ash in his mouth. He raised the glass, the effervescent liquid untasted. He felt like an imposter, a fraud standing in a temple of authentic relics, celebrating his family's most successful forgery. 3:17 a.m. The silence in Alexander's Park Avenue penthouse had its own weight. It was controlled, expensive, and suffocating. The party was over, but the sense of deception clung to him. He undid his silk tie, feeling like he was loosening a noose. He couldn't sleep. He found himself drifting toward his mother's private library. His mother had been a quiet storm, a patron of the arts who believed in artists more than assets. Charles built an empire. She built a sanctuary. This room, with its smell of old paper mahogany and her lingering Chanel No. 5, was the only place in the Golden Citadel he felt he could breathe. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a connection, something real. His fingers traced the spines of books. He stopped at a row of leather-bound archives. The label read, Emerging Talent Dossiers 2020. His mother had run a small fund to support up-and-coming designers. Most of the portfolios were glossy, submitted by agencies, but one was different. It was bound in simple black leather, no logo, just the name embossed, Zara Vance. A vague unease stirred in him. He opened it. His blood ran cold. These weren't computer renderings. These were charcoal sketches, the lines forceful and passionate. These were fabric swatches pinned with meticulous notes on weight and drape. These were photos of a younger Zara, her eyes fiery with a tired but unyielding determination, hand-draping fabric on a rickety mannequin. And then he saw it. A page dedicated to the pleating. She called it the Black Rose Fold. Beneath it was a handwritten passage, the script strong and emotional. Design isn't about clothes. It's about resilience. It's about how we build our own armor to face the world. This is my armor. Alexander had to step back, leaning against the desk. His breath came short. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't shared inspiration. This was a blueprint. This was theft. As he shakily closed the portfolio, a small card slipped out. It fluttered onto the Persian rug face up. It was the standard Stanton Legacy rejection card. Cold. Impersonal. Dear Ms. Vance, we appreciate your interest, but your work does not align with the Stanton brand direction at this time. Below it was the digital signature of Charles's executive assistant. His father had seen this. He had held this in his hands. He had seen this artist's soul, and instead of nurturing it, he had butchered it and slapped his own label on it. The vague guilt Alexander had felt at the gala now crystallized into a truth as sharp as a scalpel. Etheria wasn't an achievement. It was a violation. His legacy, his triumph, his golden citadel, all of it built on the ashes of a woman's stolen dream. The first crack had appeared in the golden wall, and through that fracture for the first time, Alexander Stanton saw the truth. 2 days later, the Bushwick coffee shop Grind and Grit where Zara worked smelled of burnt beans, steamed milk, and the dirty slush melting on the sidewalk outside. At 2 p.m. it was dead. Zara was wiping the steam wand of the espresso machine, trying to focus on the hot metal instead of the image of the dress that kept replaying in her mind like a migraine. The bell on the door chimed. She didn't look up. "Be right with you," she muttered. "Ms. Vance, Zara Vance." The voice didn't belong here. It was smooth, educated, and carried a weight she wasn't used to. She looked up, and the cold anger she'd felt on the train 2 nights ago flared into a hot, blistering fire. It was Alexander Stanton. He wasn't in a suit. He was trying to blend in an expensive charcoal gray cashmere sweater that cost more than 3 months of her rent. He looked lost, awkward, and his awkwardness only made her angrier. "You have some nerve," she said, her voice rough. Alexander held up a hand, a placating gesture. "Please, I just want to talk, 5 minutes." I have nothing to say to a Stanton. Please. He pressed, and there was something in his eyes, not arrogance, but a weariness, almost a desperation that made her pause. I found your original portfolio, the one you sent my mother years ago. That hit her. His mother. She was dead, Zara vaguely recalled. She was the only one in that empire Zara had ever hoped might understand. And, she spat. And it's brilliant, he said, his voice low. It's real, what my company did. He swallowed the shame visible on his face. It was wrong. It was theft. And I'm here to fix it. Fix it? Zara laughed a dry, mirthless sound. You can't fix it. Do you know what I had to do after your company rejected me? After I poured everything I had into that portfolio, I sold my sewing machine, my grandmother's sewing machine. Alexander flinched. He clearly hadn't prepared for this. He was used to problems being solved with phone calls and numbers. I want to make amends, he said, falling back on his script. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card in a thick envelope. This is my card, and this is an offer. Zara didn't take them. It's a contract, he explained, his voice flustered, for a senior designer position at Stanton Legacy, 6-figure salary, and in the envelope is a check. You can call it a licensing fee for the past designs, a signing bonus. Silence filled the shop. Zara stared at the envelope. A check, a job, all her problems gone. Warmth, food, security. She felt hot tears spring to her eyes, but they were tears of rage, not relief. What do you think I am? She whispered, her voice trembling. I don't understand. You think this is a billing error? Her voice rose. You think you can walk in here, throw your father's dirty money around, and buy my silence? No, that's not a senior designer position. She barked a laugh, and the sound made Alexander take a step back. To do what? So I can sit in a glass office and watch you steal some other poor girl's idea and slap the Stanton label on it so I can become a part of your gilded cage. She pointed to the door, her hand shaking. You didn't just steal my design, Stanton. You stole my belief. You stole the reason I woke up, and you think you can buy my soul back with your family's money. Zara, please be realistic. I am being realistic, she shouted, and now her whole body was vibrating. This is my reality, and I would rather starve in this reality with my integrity than get fat in your fake world. She swiped her arm, knocking the envelope and the card from his hand. They scattered on the grimy, wet floor. Get out! Get out of my shop, and tell your father this black rose is not for sale. Alexander stood stunned, his face pale. He had expected anger, maybe tears, maybe negotiation. He had not anticipated this absolute contempt. Her integrity, so raw and uncompromising even as she stood on the brink of ruin, was like a mirror reflecting his own cowardice. She was right. He hadn't come to fix it. He had come to buy it. Without another word, Alexander turned on his heel and walked out, the bell chiming mockingly. Zara leaned against the counter. Her breath ragged, the adrenaline fading, leaving a painful hollowness. She looked at the check lying on the floor. Then she picked it up along with the card and threw them straight into the trash can behind the counter. The confrontation, rather than breaking Zara, had the opposite effect. The fire she thought had gone cold was now raging. That anger was fuel. It was pure protein burning away all self-pity. If they thought she was finished, they were wrong. If they thought she could be bought, they were fools. That night she didn't sleep. She went home to her apartment. She dug out her old dusty laptop. She ignored the debt collection notices. With the last of her credit, she did two things. 1. Filed for an LLC under the name Noir Rose Designs. 2. Bought the cheapest web hosting package and a basic e-commerce template. She stayed up all night, not designing but writing. She wrote her manifesto. The homepage was just text white on black. They say beauty is fragile. They're wrong. Beauty is a weapon. It is armor forged in fire. Stanton Legacy sells pretty clothes. Noir Rose Designs builds armor for souls that refuse to break. We are not fashion. We are tailored resilience. She had no product to sell. She had no images. All she had was the word and the rage. She hit publish. In his penthouse, Alexander wasn't sleeping either. "I'm not for sale," Zara's words echoed. He paced his mother's library. He had tried to solve this the Charles Stanton way with money, and he had failed spectacularly. He had insulted her all over again. He couldn't give her back what was lost. But what if he could help her rebuild, not as Alexander Stanton, the guilty heir, but as someone who believed in the portfolio he'd found? He had to do it her way, with integrity, anonymously. The next day, he called his personal financial lawyer. "I need you to set up a venture capital fund immediately," Alexander said, his voice clipped and decisive. "A Delaware shell corporation. Call it AG Ventures. I want it completely watertight. No one, especially not my father, can trace it back to me." "The investment purpose?" the lawyer asked. "Resilience," Alexander replied. 2 days later, Zara was checking the email for her new empty website. She was expecting an email or two from spam bots. Instead, there was one, from initial.contact@agventures.com. Subject: "We invest in resilience." Zara frowned. Another scam. She opened it. "Ms. Vance, we don't invest in business plans. We invest in artists who refuse to break. We became aware of your work from the portfolio you submitted to the Stanton Arts Fund 5 years ago. We also just saw your Noir Rose Designs manifesto today. We want to invest." Zara's heart hammered. This is not a loan. This is a $150,000 seed funding investment. In return, we take no equity. Our commission is that you accept strategic mentorship from one of our senior partners. He believes in your voice, not just your product. He will communicate only via an encrypted chat app for privacy. The money will be wired within 1 hour of your acceptance. AG Ventures. This was a joke, a cruel, elaborate joke. Or, she tremblingly typed AG Ventures into Google. It existed, a Delaware LLC registered 24 hours ago. No website, no phone number, a complete ghost. But that language, artists who refuse to break. It hit the exact place where the Stanton meeting had wounded her. She was desperate. And this was a lifeline, even if it might be attached to a monster. She typed a reply, "I agree." An hour later, a notification from her bank app appeared. Electronic deposit received $150,000. Zara stared at the screen. Tears finally rolling down her cheeks. Not tears of anger, of disbelief, and a terrifying, sharp new hope. Instantly, her phone pinged. An invite to the encrypted chat app, Signal. New contact, Mentor A. This is where the story began to shift. Their relationship, filtered through the screen of anonymity, became the most real thing in either of their lives. Signal app Mentor. The money is wired. Your first task: get out of Brooklyn. Lease a small atelier in the garment district. You are not a hobbyist. Go where the sharks are. Zara, stunned by the abrupt command, obeyed. Within a week, she was standing in a small, sun-drenched loft studio on 38th Street. Zara done. Now what? Mentor, eh? Now you design. Send me your sketches. Zara spent 3 days sketching. She created a collection, beautiful, marketable, safe. She sent the scans. Mentor. This is fine. It will sell. It's also boring. Zara. Excuse me. This is what the market wants. Mentor, eh? The market wants what Stanton tells it to want. You are not Stanton. I invested in the woman who designed the black rose fold, not a Macy's knockoff. Zara felt the sting of an insult. Zara. That woman went broke. This woman needs to pay rent. Mentor. You have $150,000. You can afford to be brave for one season. Zara. She typed, deleted, typed again. What do you know about being brave? What do you know about fear? Across town, in his sterile beige office at Stanton Legacy, Alexander was staring at a boring spreadsheet of perfume profit margins. He read Zara's message. He looked out the window down at the tiny people on Madison Avenue. Mentor, I know everything about it. I know what it feels like to be locked in the most beautiful room in the world and forget the sound of your own voice. I am living in that room right now. Mentor. Don't be like me, Zara. Scream with your seams. Zara read that message 5 times. Don't be like me. She closed the safe sketchbook. She took out a fresh sheet of paper. She began to draw not from her mind but from her rage. The lines were sharp, asymmetrical, and powerful. A week passed. They argued over suppliers. Zara. I can't justify the cost of this recycled silk from Japan. It's too expensive. Mentor. What is the noir rose story? Is it just pretty armor, or is it real armor? Real armor has integrity inside and out. Zara. You talk like a philosopher, not an investor. Mentor, Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Zara. She found herself smiling for the first time in months. Are you quoting stoicism at me, mentor? Stoicism isn't being unfeeling. It's feeling everything and still choosing to act with virtue. Your virtue is authenticity. Buy the expensive fabric. Their bond deepened. Zara felt seen on a creative level no one had ever understood. Alexander felt alive for the first time, the voice he suppressed in board meetings now flowing freely, nurturing the very talent his father had tried to kill. A parallel growth was happening. Mentor. I've used my contacts. A very influential indie critic, one who hates Stanton Legacy, is coming to your studio tomorrow. Be ready. Mentor, Also, I've secured you a 10-minute presentation slot at NYFW Emerging Voices. Don't waste it. Zara stared at her phone, her heart slamming against her ribs. NYFW. He had done it. Zara. I won't. Thank you. At the exact same moment at Stanton HQ, Alexander was in a tense board meeting. And so, Charles Stanton concluded the Etheria perfume expansion into the Asian market is our top Q4 priority. Alexander will oversee. All eyes turned to Alexander. He was looking at his phone, reading Zara's thank you. No, Alexander said. The room went silent. 12 executives stopped breathing at once. Charles narrowed his eyes. What did you say? I said no. Alexander repeated, standing up. For the first time, his voice didn't shake. He felt like he was wearing an armor of his own. That fragrance is derivative. I'm submitting a new proposal, a fully sustainable supply chain transparent capsule collection. It's called Stanton Unsewn. Nonsense, Charles growled. We are a legacy brand, Alexander, not your science fair project. A legacy that doesn't evolve, Alexander shot back, his voice echoing the bravery he'd been preaching to Zara. You hired me to be the future of this company. This is the future. He left the boardroom, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. He walked into his office, his heart pounding. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. He picked up his phone. Mentor A to Zara, good. Now get to work. New York Fashion Week, NYFW, wasn't just an event, it was a battleground. And Charles Stanton was a veteran general. He sat in his office looking at the online Vogue article, 10 emerging voices to watch Noir Rose designs tops the list. Noir Rose. He tasted the name. Black Rose. Ridiculous. He clicked on the preview collection, and then he saw it. Not a copy of Etheria, but its evolution. It was edgier, angrier, smarter. It made Etheria look cheap. This wasn't a nuisance. It was a threat. This was a creator who could tell a story and was capable of telling the real story. Charles didn't call his lawyers. Lawyers were slow and left a paper trail. He picked up his personal phone. "Marco," he said to a top Italian fabric supplier who owed Stanton Legacy 40% of his revenue. "That small order for Noir Rose, find a flaw in it, a customs issue, a delay, make it disappear." He made 3 more calls, to the textile mill in New Jersey, to the leather supplier in the Hudson Valley, to the garment district atelier Zara had rented. Within an hour he had cut off her every supply line. Not a single stitch could be sewn. The Stanton Legacy was protected by suffocating any potential rivals before they could even breathe. 5 days before the show, Zara's atelier should have been a buzzing hive of activity. Instead, it was terrifyingly silent. She stood amid the empty cutting tables. Her morning had been a nightmarish chain of phone calls. "Sorry, Ms. Vance, your silk shipment is being held at customs indefinitely. We regret to inform you there's been a chemical spill. Your entire order of knitwear is destroyed." There was a booking confusion. The atelier space has been reserved for another client. She knew this wasn't coincidence. This was an execution. Charles Stanton wasn't just winning. He was enjoying it. Zara staggered back, bumping into a mannequin, and slid to the floor. She felt nausea rise. She had believed. She had believed in Mentor A. She had believed in her own courage. And for what? To be crushed all over again. She had lost everything. This time was worse. Last time she lost her dream. This time she lost her resurrected hope. She shakily pulled out her phone. She had no one else to call. She opened the Signal app. She needed to hear a voice. She hit the voice call button. At the same time, at Stanton HQ, Alexander stormed into his father's office, not bothering to knock. He was clutching a printout of the email from the New Jersey supplier. "What did you do?" His voice was hoarse with fury. Charles looked up from his desk unfazed. "I'm running a business. You should try it. You canceled her orders. You called Marco. You are sabotaging an independent designer." "I am protecting our legacy," Charles said, his voice cold as ice, "from a girl who is creating designs suspiciously similar to our intellectual property. I'm stopping a lawsuit before it starts." "Our intellectual property," Alexander shouted. "You stole it. I saw the portfolio." "That portfolio was an unsolicited submission," Charles snarled, getting to his feet. "This world is ruthless, Alexander. You'd better grow up and realize it. I did what was necessary." Alexander's phone, clutched in his hand, rang a signal call from Zara. Panic and rage exploded in him. He saw her name. He heard her choked sob through the speaker as he accidentally hit answer in his fury. "Alexander," she wept, He won. Charles Stanton. He took everything." Hearing her break at his father's hands pushed Alexander past his limit. He forgot she was on the line. He forgot everything except the raw truth. He turned on his father but screamed into the phone, his voice breaking with desperation. "I won't let you do this. I'll call my lawyers. I'll find her another supplier. I don't care. I'll use my name. I will use this goddamn Stanton name to save her from you." Silence. Charles's anger froze into cold realization. Alexander's fury dissolved into horror as he realized what he'd done. And on the other end of the line, Zara's silence was heavier than any scream. Her sobbing had stopped. Her breathing had stopped. And then a single word, sharp as an icicle, cut through the line. Alexander. He closed his eyes. Zara, please listen to me. AG Ventures. She whispered the truth unfolding itself with brutal cruelty. Mentor A. Alexander. The silence stretched for 5 seconds that felt like a lifetime. It was all you, she said, her voice completely hollow, all tears and anger gone. Just the cold fact of betrayal. It's worse than the theft. Zara, it wasn't. You weren't a mentor, she said, her voice like shattered glass. You were a zookeeper. You pitied me. You played with me. You used your father's money to pay off your guilty conscience. You built me a smaller cage so I could sing for you. No, he yelled, but it was too late. Leave me alone, she whispered. Both of you, just leave me alone. The line went dead. Alexander stared at the mute phone. What have you done? Charles asked, but this time there was a flicker of genuine alarm in his voice. Alexander looked up at his father, his eyes as empty as Zara's. I just destroyed the only thing I ever tried to build. In her atelier, Zara looked at the phone. She threw it against the opposite brick wall. The screen shattered into 1,000 pieces, just like her. Backstage at the Emerging Voices show was organized chaos. Except for the Noir Rose corner, Zara's corner was the dead calm of a battlefield. She had made it. After smashing her phone, she had sat motionless for an hour. And then she stood up. The anger had returned, but this time it wasn't hot. It was cold. It was dry ice. If Charles Stanton wanted to take her fabric, fine. She would use what he couldn't take. She had gone to a construction supply store. Now, on the racks was her collection. It was made from painter's drop cloth canvas, the rawest kind. It was made from black nylon construction mesh. It was made from clear vinyl sheets she'd ripped from furniture covers. It was raw. It was brutal. And it was beautiful. The black rose fold recreated in canvas looked more like a scar than a flower. It was a declaration of war. Zara. She turned. Alexander stood there, breathless, pale. He had run here. You can't hear my explanation, he started. But you have to know, the money, AG Ventures, that was my mother's, not his. It was her trust. Zara held up a hand and he fell silent. She looked him dead in the eye. There was no forgiveness there, just cold clarity. Alexander, she said, her voice terrifyingly steady, if you are truly sorry, if anything you told me as mentora was real, then be quiet. She stepped past him to check the seam on a vinyl jacket. And do the right thing, she said, not turning back. Not for me, not to save me, but for you, for your soul. She turned back her face, a marble mask. Now go, I have a show to start. Alexander was left alone in the backstage chaos. He looked at her, the black rose hard, unbreakable, and he knew she was right. This wasn't about saving her. This was about choosing his own legacy. Alexander didn't leave. He walked in the opposite direction toward the press area and the event's tech booth. In the auditorium, the lights dimmed. The Noir Rose show began. The first model walked out. She wore a dress made of canvas cinched with black nylon rope. The room was silent. This wasn't pretty fashion. This was truth. As that model reached the end of the runway, phones in the audience began to vibrate. All at once, critics, bloggers, buyers, all looked down. An email from Alexander Stanton. Alexander. Stanton at stantonlegacy.com. Subject: a confession regarding the Etheria collection. A murmur spread like wildfire. In the front row, Charles Stanton frowned. He opened his phone. The email read, "Ladies, gentlemen, and members of the press, legacy is a dangerous word. It can be a foundation or it can be a prison. For years I have lived in a prison built on silence. Stanton Legacy's wildly successful Etheria collection, the one that has launched countless products, was not an original design. It was stolen. It was taken directly line for line from the portfolio of a young artist who trusted us with it years ago. Her name is Zara Vance. Talent can be stolen, but integrity cannot. Tonight you are witnessing true talent undiluted and unstolen. I apologize for my silence. Integrity is the only foundation for a legacy that lasts. Attached, 2 PDFs. 1. Zara Vance Portfolio 2020.pdf high-res scans from his mother's library. 2. Etheria versus Vance side by side. PDF. An undeniable comparison. In the audience, someone gasped. Charles Stanton dropped his phone. His face was gray as concrete. On the runway, the final model walked wearing a coat of canvas and vinyl that looked like broken wings. And then Zara walked out. She didn't bow. She just stood there breathing. For 1 second, the room was silent. And then an older major fashion critic in the front row stood up. Then another. And within 10 seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet, thundering with applause. They weren't just clapping for the clothes. They were clapping for her, for the truth, for the survival. Reporters smelling blood surged toward Charles like a shark feeding cameras flashing. "Mr. Stanton, do you have a comment? Is this true?" Security rushed Charles from the venue, his face a mask of rage and defeat. Zara stood on the runway, the lights on her, and for the first time in years she closed her eyes and took a deep, free breath. Alexander watched from the back in the shadows of the tech exit. He didn't feel relief. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt empty. He had lit the fuse. Now he had to live with the fallout. He turned and walked out onto the New York street, a man with no legacy. The Garment District Atelier was now a true hive of activity. It had expanded into the space next door. Bolts of high-end fabric, real silk, recycled wool were stacked high. Noir Rose Designs was the most talked-about name in fashion, not just for the scandal, but for its uncompromising authenticity. The headlines on Zara's desk: Stanton Legacy ousts CEO Charles Stanton, and Noir Rose, the rise of authenticity. Zara was no longer a warrior. She was a builder. The door opened, and the air seemed to change. Alexander Stanton walked in. This version of Alexander was far from the polished heir or the skulking investor. He was thinner. There were shadows under his eyes. His shirt was ironed, but not perfectly. He didn't carry wealth. He carried exhaustion and resolve. He had been disinherited, publicly disowned. The staff looked up, silent. Zara motioned for them to continue. She stood. "I heard you left town," she said, her voice neutral. "I was in Chicago," he replied. "I needed to think, away from it all." They stood a few feet apart, a distance filled with the unsaid. He placed a thin, leather-bound book on her cutting table. It wasn't a sketchbook. "I didn't come here to apologize," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "Apologies are meaningless. I sent that email not to make things right with you. I did it because it was the truth. You deserve the credit." Zara nodded, accepting that. "What were you doing in Chicago?" she asked. "I was working," he said. He pushed the book toward her. "You're the artist, Zara. You're the soul, but you're running $1 million business out of a notebook. You need a structure. You need a 5-year plan. You need an end-to-end transparent supply chain that protects you from men like my father." She opened the book. It was a business plan. A perfect business plan. Financial projections, logistical analysis, global branding strategy. It wasn't just smart. It understood the mission of Noir Rose. She looked up. "This is brilliant. What do you want for it? A consulting fee?" Alexander took a deep breath. This was the moment. "You need a CEO," he said. You need someone who believes in transparency over profit, someone who knows the dark side of this industry and knows how to fight it. I'm not here asking for a job, Zara. I'm here asking to be trusted. Zara looked at him for a long time. The man who had given up his golden citadel, the man who had burned his own bridges for the truth. He was no longer the mysterious mentor or the guilty heir Alexander Stanton. He was just Alexander. She closed the business plan. First things first, she said. He waited. Get me a coffee. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. And then Zara smiled. It wasn't a guarded smile or a victorious one. It was a real, small, and slightly tired smile. Black. No sugar, she said. We have a lot of work to do. A wave of relief washed over Alexander so strong it almost made him tremble. He nodded. Yes, ma'am, he said, and for the first time in his life the words felt right. He took off his worn coat, hung it on a hook. He rolled up his shirt sleeves. The Black Rose was free from the Khan, and the prisoner of the Golden Citadel was finally free himself. They were starting over on the only foundation that mattered, not perfection but truth. And in the end, the Black Rose won not by revenge but by refusing to be bought. Zara proved that integrity is the one weapon that can't be stolen. And Alexander, after abandoning his golden citadel, finally found the one thing money couldn't buy him: freedom. Their story is a powerful reminder. A true legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you're brave enough to build. What do you think of this ending? Will their partnership last? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next inspiring story.